Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is an absolutely crucial and honestly pretty fascinating paradigm shift happening in cybersecurity right now. We're talking about the leap from legacy, human-centric identity and access management straight into the frontier of agentic AI identity governance. Look, if you've been working with traditional IAM platforms, your world is about to change drastically. So this explainer is going to serve as your practical, architect-level blueprint to help you build the precise skills required for this massive strategic shift. To understand exactly why this shift is happening right now, just look at this number. 27 seconds. No, that's not a typo. That is literally the fastest recorded e-crime breakout time we've observed recently. Adversaries aren't sitting there manually typing commands anymore. They are weaponizing AI and deploying intelligent agents across the kill chain. They are moving at literal machine speed.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because while the bad guys are moving at machine speed, our defense teams are facing a massive bottleneck. We're looking at over 4 million unfilled cybersecurity positions worldwide. Human Speed Security Operations Centers, or SOCs, are, quite frankly, breaking under the pressure of relentless alert volume and cognitive overload. We physically cannot hire enough humans to fight a machine speed war. We need autonomous AI agents fighting on our side.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the agentic security crisis and then build out a clear, four-dimensional architectural blueprint to bridge your legacy IAM expertise to next-generation AI defenses. We'll hit Dimension 1, Reasoning Engine, Dimension 2, Ephemeral Lifecycles, Dimension 3, Continuous Oversight, Dimension 4, Multi-Agent Trust, and finally wrap up with building your agentic future.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the agentic security crisis, machine speed versus human capacity.
Now, while building an agentic SOC is pretty much the only way to scale our defenses, it relies heavily on what we call non-human identities, or NHIs. Think machine accounts, service identities, and AI agents operating across your cloud infrastructure. The massive risk here? These autonomous agents often operate entirely without traditional session-based oversight. If you don't secure these non-human identities properly, you're essentially handing over the keys to the kingdom to a piece of code that could easily be manipulated.
Moving on to Section 2, which is Dimension 1, Reasoning Engine.
In the legacy world, think of platforms like Microsoft MIM. Identity controls are built around static rules, Active Directory groups, and very deterministic workflows. It's all very predictable. But autonomous agents, they don't work like that. They operate on dynamic execution paths generated in real time by a large language model. To govern this, you have to build your skills in contextual policy as code. You need to learn how to write policies that govern an agent's intents and tool boundaries rather than just static application roles, and integrate those policy engines directly into the agent's execution loop.
And the key to understanding this is the REACT, or reason plus act pattern. Because agents reason and act in a continuous iterative loop, you absolutely cannot just authenticate them once at the front door. You have to architect tool-level access control, meaning the agent must present a cryptographic assertion verifying it's authorized to call a specific API at that specific step of its reasoning path. You also need to level up your goal auditing skills, using secondary out-of-band models to continuously parse the agent's plan and make sure malicious input hasn't hijacked its core objective.
All right, Section 3 brings us to Dimension 2, Ephemeral Lifecycles.
You know, traditional machine identities are semi-permanent. They are long-lived. But in an AI context, a long-lived API token is basically a ticking time bomb for massive token abuse and lateral movement. Agentic identity governance requires managing highly transient identities that exist only for the lifespan of a single task. You must practice designing just-in-time, or JIT, credential orchestration. Think identity brokerages that automatically check out short-lived API keys from privileged access management vaults like CyberArk only when absolutely needed. To pull this off, you need to build capabilities in isolated sandbox management. Here's how the architecture should flow. 1. An agent request tool execution. 2. The system dynamically spins up a restricted, transient container, like a Docker sandbox. 3. Ephemeral credentials are injected into that sandbox just for a microsecond execution window. And 4. The moment the task is done, the container is immediately destroyed and reset. Boom. Zero persistence left behind for an attacker to exploit. And remember, you can't just spawn agents out of thin air. An agent has to go through a formal cryptographic birth process. This involves standard registration schemas for formal discovery, attestation, and cryptographic signing during onboarding before it can inherit any non-human identity status at all. And of course, rapid token rotation, and immediate decommissioning post-task.
Next up, Section 4, Dimension 3, Continuous Oversight. So how do you govern a worker that never actually logs in or out? Legacy systems rely heavily on session-based oversight. Think interactive logins, human MFA prompts, predictable timeouts. But AI agents don't have sessions. They schedule and run parallel reasoning loops entirely in the background. Because of this, we must shift our mental models to continuous monitoring and lineage architecture.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the structural security gaps of these non-human identities. You must train yourself in NHI threat profiling to mitigate things like the confused deputy vulnerability. This is where an attacker manipulates an agent into abusing its elevated privileges on behalf of a lower privileged user. If you aren't validating the end user's authorization at every single tool invocation step, your agent is wide open to being spoofed or impersonated.
And a lot of this happens through prompt injections. But unlike a simple chatbot jailbreak, goal manipulation in an agentic system alters the agent's long-term reasoning processes. This is exactly why you must learn to design immutable lineage and traceability architecture. You can't just log the API call. You have to capture the exact knowledge lineage, the specific sequence of model prompts and vector database retrievals that led to a decision. You also need skills in behavioral anomaly profiling, baselining normal API rates to immediately catch and isolate an agent if it starts acting out of character.
Moving right along to Section 5, Dimension 4, Multi-Agent Trust.
Traditional IAM focuses pretty much entirely on securing the perimeter between a human user and a target application. But in the Agentic SOC, we're dealing with multi-agent systems, or MAS. This is where you have hierarchical agents delegating tasks to one another, coordinating workflows, and sharing highly sensitive context across decentralized topologies. The trust boundary has completely shifted. You now have to gain deep expertise in inter-agent protocol security.
To lock this down, OWASP recommends several proactive defenses. You need cryptographic identity verification across the board. You need granular role and attribute-based access controls. For high-privileged AI accounts, you even need a form of continuous reauthentication, preventing cross-agent privilege delegation unless it is explicitly authorized through predefined workflows. But most importantly, you must enforce mutual authentication for all AI-to-AI interactions. Absolutely no agent should trust another agent without cryptographic proof. And that brings us to our final section, Section 6, Building Your Agentic Future. Let's bring this all together. Our ultimate goal here isn't replacing humans, it's evolving them. In an ideal setup, for alert, triage, and investigation, the AI's role is high. It analyzes the context, builds attack narratives, and suppresses false positives at machine speed. But the human role remains totally vital. We validate the escalations, apply judgment on complex intents, and approve actions in high-risk response scenarios. The general rule of thumb? Automate where context and consistency matter most, and keep humans in command where judgment and accountability are absolutely critical.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If adversaries are already out there deploying intelligent AI agents that execute multi-step attacks at machine speed, is your legacy identity platform, the one reliant on static rules and semi-permanent service accounts, the weakest link in your SOC? It's time to bridge the gap and start architecting your agentic identity governance today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to break down the future of technology.